Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to R Squared Technology. I am your host Ryan, and let's get ready to SolidWorks. Here we are yet again on another glorious Monday, or maybe not so glorious, depends. Me, Mondays, bittersweet. But we are now going to move on in the subassembly for the torsion axle of this challenge series, if you will, for the motorcycle truck bed / trailer. If you've been following along, if you're not and you're new to this channel and just checking this video out for the first time, go back to the beginning, because this may or may not make sense, but you do as you like. So with that, we're going to create the torsion rod, as I'm going to call it, and then the main part of the torsion axle itself. And then if we have time, we're going to jump into the beginning of assembling this subassembly. And then that subassembly is going to be assembled into the complete assembly of the trailer eventually, in a future video. So, let's jump in. Alright, so now we're going to start out with the torsion rod, as I'm calling it, which is the suspension for the torsion axle system. It takes the place of a leaf spring or straight up a shock absorber, and it's really clever how this assembly design will come together to create that suspension. So with that, we will start on the front plane, and the reason for this is because I made the axle housing on the front plane as well. This comes into play in making it easier and more efficient to create this assembly, because I won't have to manipulate the orientation or figure out mates to make it snap to the proper orientation. Sometimes you can get away with doing that, where you make one mate and another and it's enough to rotate the part as you need it. But when things become more complex assemblies and you have more complex shaped parts, and they have to go in a very specific way and or have certain tolerance spacing to them, well, you're going to want to consider that in your overall assembly design and what orientation which parts are. For example, like the housing, I would say, is a kind of a driving part, and so I'd want everything to be oriented to fit properly into that part as the design requires. So with that, the front plane is the choice on this one. On top of, it's still my favorite plane. Why? I don't really know, but it just is. I like to build things on the front plane first, if possible. So, Control-8 on the keyboard to bring that normal to. Again, alternatively, you can always hit the space bar and choose front normal to, Control-1, or you can do normal to this way. So, from here, this is going to be a simple part. I'm going to go to my Sketch tab. I'm going to choose a circle, and I want the circle's center point to be coincident to the origin. So take your number 2 pencil, highlight the origin, make sure you have the little yellow relation icon, and this one shows coincident. We'll grab and drag out. Doesn't matter how much or how little, just enough to make it easy to add a dimension. And we'll choose a smart dimension of just ½ inch. We may need to make adjustments as we go along. So then we can close the dialog here, and just from here go over into our Features tab. We'll choose the Extruded Boss Base, and then I want to choose the end condition, my favorite, midplane. And this is going to be a 38-inch rod to match the axle housing length here. Select that, and I'll hit the space bar and give it an isometric view here so we can see the entire rod. And then we're going to give it just a generic rubber material. Offhand, I do not recall what exact materials are used. I'm sure it's a hard durometer for sure, because again, you're keeping the axle's pivot arms from keeping the wheels, hitting up into the fender. So it's got to maintain a certain amount of give versus not, completely allowing it to rotate around. And again, you'll see in the assembly why it needs to have a certain hardness to it. So, generic rubber material for now. Control S, save often. Remember, I always recommend Control S, give your part a name, save it first, give it a location, and then save often thereafter. And now with that, we're going to go into the main part of the torsion axle itself. And then from there, I will give you a sneak peek into an assembly. Alright, moving on to the main part of the torsion axle itself. Again, we will choose the front plane for ease of assembly. Control 8 to bring it normal to, the view that is. We'll go over to the sketch tab. We will choose, this time, instead of a center rectangle, a 3-point center rectangle. Select it here. Choose the origin as the center point. And then we can drag out in any direction. And then we can make this a rectangle as such. We're going to add some relations so that this has a square form to it rather than rectangle. So the first thing I want to do is take this point here, and I want the origin, and I'm going to make it vertical. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take these two lines here. They're kind of diagonal, so semi-vertical horizontal lines, and I'm going to make them equal, like such. And now from here I can just pick one of these sides. Now keep in mind, this type of dimension versus this type of dimension does make a difference, and we want it to dimension this way. So we'll select that, and it's going to be 1.018 inches. Enter. And now we're fully defined. Where did I come up with that number, you may ask? Well, when I go into the assembly of this part, I'll show you the details of how I came up with this calculation. And also, I'm going to show you how to do a quick change to the rod we just previously made within the assembly, because it needs to be a little bit larger diameter. So from here, close dialog, go to the Features tab, extrude a boss base. Midplane is, again, a saved state from the previous drawing. And for that, this one, though, is going to be a length of 39.5. Select OK. And again, you can hit the space bar to bring it isometric. Materials, we could do cast alloy steel. And for now, I'm going to turn off real view graphics. Or we could leave it on, however you wish. Control S. And that is going to complete the main part of the torsion axle itself. So now we'll go into a little bit of the assembly for this sub-assembly. Alright, we're going to bring this all together now for the three parts we've made so far, which is the axle housing, the axle rod, and then the axle itself. And then we will add more to this assembly later on once we've completed more of the parts. So to begin, you would choose File, New, and Assembly. Another option is from the part itself you can choose File and make Assembly from Part. But in this case, I just wanted it to be made as it's just individual assembly file, and then we can throw in what parts we want. So to start, come up here, we want to make sure we're in the Assembly tab, go Insert Component, and I'm going to choose the housing as kind of my foundational part. And over here in the bottom left under the properties, I'm going to choose Float before I add it in. And then I'll just click somewhere in the graphics area. Now notice it's floating, it's not tied to anything, and it's not fixed in any position. So from here, over in the Features tree, I'm going to choose the little right arrow drop down. I'm going to choose the front plane and press Control key and the front plane. And then I'm going to come up here to the little paperclip icon and click Mate. Anybody remember when they had the paperclip icon as an assistant in Microsoft Word? I do. That guy was hilarious. So from here, once the Mate properties opens up, we want to be under the Standard tab, and we want to make sure it's coincident, and we'll select OK. Now from here in the graphics area, if it isn't already expanded, click on the right arrow for the drop down, and then we can choose the top plane, and we don't have to press the control key this time. Choose the top plane again. Again, coincident mate there. Click OK. And then we'll finally do the right plane and the right plane. Coincident mate. Select OK. And OK again. And Control S. Now from here, I can hit the space bar and bring the front side normal to check things out. And then I'm going to come up here, insert a component. I'm going to choose the torsion rod, the suspension. Open that up, and we'll place it somewhere. And then I'm going to drag it kind of inside this. We want it inside the secondary rectangle here. This. And then from here, I'm going to press and hold the control key, select the cylindrical face here, and I'm letting go of the control key for a moment so I can press the center scroll wheel in to rotate and manipulate the part. And here I'm just scrolling in and out with the center scroll wheel. That's how I'm manipulating it. So then I'll press and hold the control key and select this surface here. Select mate. And we want a tangent mate for this one under standard. Select OK. Select this same cylindrical face here. Select this sidewall surface here. Tangent mate as well. Select OK. And then finally I'm going to take this edge face here and this edge of the rod, and I want it to be coincident. Select OK and OK again, and I'll hit Control S. So now we've got one of those in place. Now remember, I said we may have to change this. So we can actually come down here into the features tree, and we can select this first right arrow drop down, and then we can go to our boss extrude feature here, drop that down, go into the sketch, and we can choose edit, and then from here we can change this to 0.75. Select that, exit the sketch, click on edit component, and I'm going to hit Control S, and now you're going to notice it's got two things coming up. So I changed the part, so it's asking, okay, so you want to save the assembly and then the change you made into the part itself, and I do. So save all. Now I'm going to hit the space bar and bring the front view normal to again. And then from here, I'm going to choose the right plane, and I'm actually going to go into sketch, and I'm going to choose a center line for this. And then I'll do spacebar and normal too. And we'll go from one side of the axle housing to the other. Select. Exit out of that. And then we're going to name this axis. Let's make that caps. Like such. Then I can bring a spacebar front view. And now from here, I'm going to go to the Assembly tab, and then I'm going to choose under Linear Component, Circular Component Pattern, and then I'm going to choose the direction and axis of rotation. It's going to be this. We're going to do 360 degrees. There's going to be 4 instants of this. Another way you can do it is equal spacing. Components to pattern. Select that. Select OK. And just like that, I have the 4 that I need. Now I'm going to hide this axis, hit Control S, and then from here, I'm going to go back up, Assembly tab, Insert Component. I'm going to choose the torsion axle itself, open that up, and again, I'm just pressing the center scroll wheel at the moment to manipulate and rotate the part. And then we'll place it right about in there. And from here, what I can do is I'm going to collapse some of these so that I don't have a very busy feature tree. Now from here, I can choose right plane and the right plane and mate. And we want a coincident mate, so we'll select OK. And from here, I will go top plane and top plane, and front plane and front plane. And that's going to center it exactly as I need. within this housing. Then I can select OK, hit Control S, and this is the beginning of this assembly with these mates seen here. I'll do spacebar, bring it isometric, and that is going to conclude this Monday's challenge video. I hope you learned something from it. Got an intro to the assembly side of things here, because up to this point I've basically only been doing parts. So until next Monday, take care, and I will see you next time.